Welcome to this second part in a six-week or six-session series on becoming a mission-shaped church. Last session we thought about what is mission impossible, and I guess one way of summing up that whole session was this simple idea that it's not the church that has a mission, but the God of mission that has a church, and we get to join in what God is doing. Today we're thinking about something different. Mission and fear. What are you afraid of? Perhaps it's of getting hijacked, or of the dark, or rejection, or failure. Sometimes our fears are irrational, meaning that actually there's no real basis or reason for them. Our fears are often staring us in the face. Fear plays a role in many parts of our lives and in all the decisions we make on almost a daily basis. The entire insurance industry, for example, is really based on fear. It tells us we need car and medical and health and bond insurance. It tries to take away the what-ifs in our lives. At least it thinks it can. But fear stops many of us from doing the things that God has called us into, fulfilling our dreams and our destinies in God. It's the arch manipulator, and it can bore its way into our hearts, and it will make a nest there and stay until we take decisive action. In South Africa, we see on a daily basis how fear controls and dictates many of our lives. Fear is one of the key reasons why the church doesn't fulfill its calling in God. Apartheid was essentially built on manipulation and fear. It used fear to control both black and white. Nothing blinds and binds people more effectively than fear. It lived on lies, it fed on lies, to both the privileged and the suffering. In feeding us lies, it alienated us from one another. It stopped us from understanding each other, and that was the tragic consequence, is that it stopped us from understanding ourselves. In his book, God in South Africa, Father Albert Nolan wrote this: in the 1987 whites-only election, the National Party, despite its political confusion, despite its resignation of all its intelligentsia, was able to secure a landslide victory simply by playing on the fears of white people. Fear has taught us to be coarse and to be harsh with one another. It's a form of protection. And fear has made us deeply suspicious of people who aren't like us, to keep those in skin colour and culture and identity at a distance from us. And it stops us from really seeing one another. And in doing so, it's made us, to an extent, inhumane. It stops us from reaching out. Fear of crime has become one of the biggest factors for stopping people being the hands and feet of Jesus. Fear takes other forms too. Fear of what people think of us when they find out that we're a believer in Jesus Christ, or fear of all sorts of other things. And that fear to fail often can completely paralyse us. And fear of man is not healthy if we want to do what God has called us to do. If we're terrified about sharing our relationship with Jesus Christ, then we reveal something of what that relationship is like. There seems to be two types of fear, roughly, in the Old and the New Testament. The idea of fearing God, of giving Him reverence, of acknowledging who He is and respecting Him, is understood as fearing Him. Proverbs 9 verse 10 says, "Fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom." Now that's clearly a good thing, and it's not to be confused with being absolutely morbidly terrified of God. Throughout the Old Testament, God uses the phrase, "Do not be afraid, I am with you," as He calls people like Jeremiah and Joshua. He reminds both Jeremiah and Daniel, among others, that He has got a plan and purpose for them, and He'll walk with them. Again, in the New Testament, the word for fear, the Greek word for fear, phobos, is used to speak of God-fearing men, as well as John's exhortation that perfect love casts out fear. It's clear that fear has no place in the lives of those who love Him, because He makes us bomb-proof with His love. Why should we be afraid of anything that men can do to us? This is made plain in the book of Acts, where again and again the disciples were ready to face hardship, suffering, lack of finances, food, shelter, and even their own reputations in order to share the story of Jesus. And they were empowered by the Holy Spirit that gave them a new boldness, and they had a distinct lack of fear in everything they did. Think how many times Paul was in prison, or shipwrecked, or beaten, or persecuted. Fear wasn't on his agenda. The question that we have to ask ourselves is, how much does fear manipulate, control us when it comes to reaching out? Perhaps when you look at your own lives, in your groups today or in your church, you might see how much fear is in fact an arch manipulator. And we need to be full again of God's Spirit, that we can go out and do the things He's called us to do without being controlled or dictated to by our own fears.